Our theme for today's meeting is writing your family's history for those who come after us. Wonderful example of why we need to write our stories is shown in the PBS video entitled The Pilgrims, which is wonderfully done by the brother of Ken Burns, Rick Burns. It follows the Mayflower Pilgrims from their first utopia in Holland to their landing in Plymouth and their first 2 years there. It is not the story that you probably learned in grammar school, but the story of survival and hardship, as well as the story of the first Thanksgiving, which also was not like the story you probably have always thought it was. We know because those who could wrote accounts and diaries of their journey and undertaking. As you know, the Mayflower passengers were not the first to come to the New World. There were Native Americans here already, other colonies, adventurers, fur traders, fishermen, and explorers before them.
At this time of life, there is some thinking about the loss because of the people that won't be at the Thanksgiving parties that we have.
But if you had stories written down about them that you could tell, it's like they're there.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point of today's meeting is you could write, they can't write their stories, but you could write about them, or you could write about yourself, so that people at Thanksgivings in the future can tell those stories and feel, get to know you and whoever else you would write about.
So they know who to blame.
I'm thinking of, sending an email to the people coming to my Thanksgiving party about writing about the 3 that I saw that are no longer living that are in the picture.
And wouldn't that be a wonderful record to keep for the, the children as they get older? Like I said in my introduction, when you're young, you don't think about asking those questions.
Right.
There's so many questions I wish I would have asked, but who can answer them now? Because nobody wrote anything down. I mean, you can go to the census records and find facts, but you can't find stories of how they lived, what they did, how they survived, what they felt about things.
Yeah, and we do stuff like that at my Thanksgiving party with my cousins, but I'm thinking writing in advance about the people that have passed away, stories that we remember that were funny or heartwarming would be something that we could share then during the party.
The second best thing that I can think of, and all of you know that I love taking the pictures, right?
Yeah.
You certainly do.
And you know how they say like a picture is 1,000 words? And so pictures can trigger your ability to write the story of what was happening there. And then if you gather your siblings and your cousins together, this was happening, this was happening. And then you can build a story based upon the picture as opposed to just the word per se.
Well, I wish I had a picture of me sitting cuddling in my mom's lap when I was 5.
If you don't know what StoryCorps is, it's a program where if you saw the box in one of the shots in the little cartoon, they have train stations. They have had, I don't know what they have now, but anyway, a booth where you can go in and tell your story, and they add it to the record of all the stories of America.
And it's on, there's an app for every phone you can do your own storytelling right there at Thanksgiving dinner. And if anybody wants some help putting on the app and practicing with it, I'd be glad to show you. Not today, but before Thanksgiving.
Well, I hope we've been inspiring to you to write some stories of your family.
So let me tell a story before you conclude.
These here, we inspired Dave.
Less than 10 years ago, I was writing for a senior group a story on my family. And it, in writing the story, brought up all kinds of questions that I didn't know the answer to, but I wrote the story anyway. But that propelled me to who I see my aunt, I was taking out every Thursday for dinner, for lunch anyway. And I was picking up her sister, also my aunt, and we were going to lunch. And all of a sudden I had new conversation with them, and it was about their pets. And I was learning something about these people who I've known almost all my life, but I didn't know anything about this. And I discovered in this process that I grew up in an Irish immigrant family. I didn't know I grew up in an Irish immigrant family. I thought everybody's father sang Patty McGinty's Goat. I didn't know this was different than what other people experience. And I found out that telling some of these stories to my nieces and nephews who didn't know they were part of this Irish immigrant family either, although actually they knew better than I, because it seems the third generation are always prouder and more interested in where they come from than the people who come from there, because the people who come from there aren't interested in that. They're more important about where they're at now. They want to be good Americans. They don't want to be good Irish people. They left Ireland. They don't want that. But you don't know all this until you ask. At least I didn't know any of this until I asked questions. And until I became interested. And becoming interested was when I joined this senior group telling their stories, and they suggested I write a story about this. I thought I was joining an actors group because I'm a bit of an actor too. And it morphed into this storytelling group. And I'm extremely happy it did. And I'm suggesting do it yourself. You'll find it very enlightening to yourself about yourself. Hopefully there's still time that are still there. In my case, actually there aren't. But it was only 10 years ago that there was, and I was lucky enough to realize who was leaving me, or finding out who was leaving me. Anyway, okay.
And as being the older generation,
Now
it's up to you to,
now there's no more aunts and uncles, no more great aunts and uncles for them. It's just us.
but you can tell your story and they'll enjoy it years and years from now.
I can even tell some of their story. Anyway.
Even if you have no one else to tell it to and you want to tell your story, come and I'll record it and we'll put it in the Smithsonian if you so desire. Which you can do, anybody can do on an app on their phone. If there's no family or anybody else, these are very important stories.
Because times change. I mean, when you think about the life your parents led, it's not like the life you lead.
Oh my God.
And how are your children and your nieces and nephews going to know what the type of life you led unless you tell them somehow?
So in my case, I mean, how did I even know that everybody isn't Irish? I mean, or that Irish aren't the same as everybody else, that we aren't we're different. And you kind of don't know that until you investigate who you are. And all of a sudden, oh, that's not like, I don't know, my next door neighbor or whatever. There's gold in them, their memories,
Stories
that you can grab onto.
Yeah, just like the memories from your parents are precious, you know, to those that come after you, your memories are precious.
Somebody mentioned that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and there is actually a man who has devoted himself to taking pictures and he zooms in on a lapel pin that shows that you belong to that this ancestor belonged to a union or a fraternal group, and they can determine how people lived, and actually has reunited people who have submitted the pictures with excuse me, their ancestors. This was done on WGN, Larry Potash backstory. The man's name was Joe, and the website has a very odd name like Dead Don or something like that. And so I would suggest looking this up under Larry Potash backstory, and you can research a family picture and find out how your ancestor lived if you have these unidentified pictures. But for those of you who have pictures, please write on the back, left to right, identify who you can, identify the year the picture was taken, and if you take those pictures to your Thanksgiving table, then maybe other people will have memories of those as well.
Thank you, Georgia. Mike, you had a
Yeah, I
story?
was just gonna share real quickly. Like when I was in second grade, I believe it had to be, well, maybe even when I was in like second grade, elementary school, my grandmother, her name King Mom, affectionately, she always, you know, she wrote me back and forth. I, you know, wrote my second-year-old little letter to her, and she always responded to me. And the way I know it had to be somewhere around second grade, because it was 1961. She was explaining to me that the postman, you know, the letter carrier was amazed that I could make a 9 like an upside down 6. I guess as a little kid. And so I had a stack of those little letters that went back and forth between King Mama and myself. And I wish I had kept up with them, because that would show that era and what was going on with my grandmother and myself way back in 1960.
Those are precious.
Yeah.
I have the love letters from my mother and father before they were married, because my father came to Chicago to work and my mother was still in Joliet. So they wrote letters back and forth. It's wonderful to have that, because you know how they felt at that time of their life, you know?
That's very validating.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all for coming.
Anybody online? Anybody
And
else
as I
online?
said, if you write a story and you want to tell it at our December party, please bring it. We'd love to hear it. Stories are good.
Or if you want to tell the story ahead of time, we can put it together in a
Yeah,
video too.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all your work on this.
Oh, it was my pleasure.